If you've never been a small business owner, then you might not know that a lot of the success in business comes from failing and then pivoting away from what failed. And in this video, I want to share with you some ideas within my space consulting company, Astrolytical, that failed, that I pivoted away from, to understand that the companies that you observe succeeding have had a lot of little failures along the way that they have learned from. And I want to share some of those lessons learned with you in this video. Hi, my name is Laura Forsick. I'm the executive director of Astrolytical, which is a small boutique space consulting firm. And I want to share with you some of the business ideas I had along the past 7 years of my company that just did not work out, and some lessons learned from those failures to get the business to where it is today. First, imagine that you are a small business owner and you want to understand how to enter a market that is already in existence. There were already space consulting firms that were writing reports and releasing reports and selling these reports for some thousands of dollars. And I was under the mistaken impression that the way for me to enter this field was to undercut everybody. I was going to sell reports for ridiculously cheap. So one of the first business ideas that I had in the first year or so of my company was to write these little mini reports and sell them for $20. $20. Can you imagine? There's companies over here selling reports for $4,000, $8,000, and I'm selling reports for $20, and I'm a nobody at this point. Nobody's heard of Astrolytical before, and you can imagine that didn't work out. I sold, I think, 1, maybe 2 reports at that price point. The trick here is that people who see something priced so very below its competition assume that something is wrong with the product. That first report, it was a space policy analysis taking a look at how different members of Congress felt about certain space-related topics. It was really good analysis, but anybody who looks at a $20 price point for a report, even a small little mini report, will assume that it is essentially worthless. Another thing that went wrong here is that it wasn't worth my time. Selling these at $20 a piece, I would have needed to sold hundreds or maybe even thousands to make it worth my time to do. So this was absolutely a failed idea. I now sell these reports for, 4 figures. I have learned along the way that a report like that needs to be worth the time investment, and it's not just me anymore. So back when I first started the company, it was me doing all the research, me doing all the writing, me creating the plots, me doing the graphic design. And now I outsource some of that to team members. And so I need to be able to pay them, and I can't pay them at $20 a pop. So it really does not make financial sense to charge super low for a product that actually takes a lot of resources in terms of time and expense to create. At that point, you might as well be giving it away for free. On the other end of the spectrum, I was actually putting out a lot of reports a few years ago within my company, and I had this idea that some clients might actually want to do an annual subscription to look at all the reports that Astrolytical puts out in a year. The problem with this was that the reports were so very different. Yes, they were space related. They all fall under that space umbrella, but someone who is interested in, say, space tourism is not necessarily interested in launch delays. So the clients that were most interested in certain reports, they bought those reports, but they weren't necessarily going to read all the reports that my company put out. So it wasn't necessarily cost effective for them to do an annual subscription. We had nobody take this on. Now, this is probably different for a larger firm that is able to put out tens of reports each year that might actually be cost effective for a client to subscribe annually and have access to several reports that they're actually interested in reading or citing, rather than just maybe 1 report a year that they're interested in. And so maybe this was a failure because my company was not at that point yet. In a similar vein, paid newsletter subscriptions was something we played around with for a few months. And this actually did get some traction. We did get some clients subscribe. However, it was not worth the effort. There is so much information out there that's for free. I personally subscribe to dozens of newsletters, some of them daily, some of them weekly. They're all free. This information is freely available. So why would anyone pay for your newsletter? It has to be something truly remarkable. And the client, the customer, they have to already trust you and know you. And our information was good, right? We put out really good analysis, and we had a graphic designer do the layout of the newsletter. I mean, it was a good product. The problem was it was so much time and effort for so few clientele, and it actually distracted from our main purpose. We ended up ending that subscription service after, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months. It was a nice attempt, but at this point we're sticking with free content so that we can really help the community understand that our information is valuable. Another failure was not understanding the audience or confusing the audience with different niches. So I just talked about how newsletters were distracting to our main business. So were other ventures that I tried to move the business into. Very early in the business, I had a client come to me. They wanted help with fundraising. And this was a space-related client, and it was a space-related event that they were fundraising for. But I'm not a fundraiser. That's not my purpose. That is not Astrolytical's purpose. And anybody who I was contacting to try to get them to sign up for this event and give money to this event, they were probably confused as to why a space consulting company was fundraising for another organization. And so I really needed to focus on what our true value was so that our customers, our clients, our audience wouldn't be confused about who Astrolytical is. Another way this manifested was after I published my first book. I really tried to help others understand how they could market to a certain space demographic. But I'm not a marketer, and Astrolytical is not a marketing agency. So that didn't get any traction at all. Nobody was interested in how to market to a certain space demographic from a space consulting company that it doesn't specialize in marketing. There was an attempt at one point for a joint venture speaking event that completely failed. So these can work really well if the partner is very well known or has a very high marketing budget and is able to get the word out that this event is happening. This was an online event, a virtual event before the pandemic, so before virtual events were very common. And I was approached by someone who wanted to do a training event, a seminar on a certain space-related topic. I don't even remember anymore. And they were going to take on the hosting, take on the marketing, all of that, and do I think a 50-50 split or something similar. And that sounded great in theory. And again, it can work if the partner is committed to the process, but that partner did absolutely no marketing. That partner, I think they did a few social media posts where they had almost no audience on social media. So I don't believe they did any paid marketing at all. They had essentially no audience in the space community. They were new to space. I had a much larger audience, so I was promoting the event. To my knowledge, I don't think he sold tickets, or at least he didn't sell enough tickets for the event to happen. And so this could have been a good idea if it had been the right partner. One thing I thought we could do was space policy advocacy and get paid for it. Well, you can't really get paid unless you're a lobbyist, and that requires a certain profession. That is a certain certification. That I am not a lobbyist, and no one on my team is a lobbyist, and therefore we were never going to get paid for space policy advocacy. We have done some space policy consulting, but in terms of going to the Hill, for example, and talking to lawmakers, that is really something that is pro bono. That is a volunteer effort that I have done a lot in my past, both on the national level and the state level. Also, it's highly location dependent. So for example, if you're living in Washington, D.C., it is a whole lot easier to do a lot more boots on the ground type of space policy work than if you're living here in the Atlanta area. Now, Atlanta is a state capital, and you can do some space policy work at state capital. In Florida, I used to go to Tallahassee once a year or so and do some space policy volunteer work there. However, Atlanta is an aviation aerospace state, not a space aerospace state. They don't care at all about space here. I've learned the hard way. So it really is location dependent. So I had to learn the hard way that space advocacy is volunteer work, whereas space lobbying is the type of work that gets money through the door. The last area I want to talk about here is fortune telling. Now let me explain, right? That sounds very odd. Fortune telling. This is extremely common in market research companies, in space consulting companies. You will see them called projections, for example. People who write reports who try to predict the future. They try to do fortune telling for stakeholders, whether the stakeholder is an investor or a government entity or a customer. They try to predict where the market is going to go, and they're almost always wrong. And I'm putting myself in this category because I actually have written a few of these reports where I have done fortune telling, and it's almost always wrong. Sometimes it's a little wrong, sometimes most of the time it is very wrong. And as a small business owner, I'm the one responsible for the integrity of my company. And it did not feel like I was aligned with integrity to do fortune telling when I knew it was going to be wrong, when I knew that there was a significant error. So now what we do instead is we present data. We present the data to the reader and let them decide. We tell them that we think it's going to go this way. We think this is likely, but we don't try to predict numbers. We don't try to say that the market is going to be X number of dollars by this year, or that there's going to be X number of launches by this year, or all the other things that you will see quoted in the headlines, because that does not align with what my company is trying to do. We value accuracy. We value non-hype. These are just the values that I have decided that my company is going to go in, which sets us apart from most other space consulting and space market research companies. So fortune telling is out and data presentation is in. I do have one more bonus tip for you here. One of the biggest failures of my company was trying to be a general space consultant. Have you heard the term niche down? It really truly matters. And I thought that my niche when I started Astrolytical was space consulting, but that is not enough of a niche. Space is very broad. Space is many different types of industries that we put under the umbrella term space. And one of the things that I thought I could do was handle them all. With my tiny little small boutique company, when we first started out, it was just me. I really had to understand that I truly did need to niche down. What does Astrolytical truly focus on? Who are our true ideal clients? Sounds like really beginner business plan work, right? But I'm not a business person by training. I'm a scientist. And now Astrolytical focuses on helping companies, government entities, and nonprofits to grow in the space sector, especially the emerging space sector. And that is where we focus. We don't do telecommunications, for example. We have a specific niche, and we are excellent at what we do. Whereas if someone comes to us wanting some kind of engineering consulting, for example, we refer them to somebody else because that is not our niche. You need to understand what your business is truly about and focus down on that without getting distracted by everything else that your business could become. Instead, make it the best that it is in a specific segment for a specific ideal client. If Astrolytical can help your company or organization to grow in space, contact us at astrolytical.com, and we're happy to talk to you about your place in space.